Deep in the mist-shrouded highlands, entirely separated from the noise of the modern world, sits a place designed for absolute devotion. This geographic isolation keeps the outside world at bay, while enforcing a sense of unquestionable spiritual purity. Inside a traditional Indonesian pesantren, or Islamic boarding school, the structure is a tightly closed ecosystem. The students walking these streets live under a rigid, unyielding moral code. Absolute discipline is the expectation, and obedience to the elders is the very air they breathe. But that pristine order is instantly shattered. A dark, chaotic force violently intrudes upon this holy space. The strict laws governing the prayer halls and dormitories are immediately broken by an entity that completely ignores the protective wards of the sanctuary. Night falls, and a suffocating fear grips the dormitories. The silence of the sleeping quarters is punctured by inexplicable, terrifying occurrences. Shadows linger too long by the bunk beds. Unseen hands strip away the heavy blankets. The students are trapped in a space that is supposed to be their safest haven, wide awake and paralyzed. A sanctuary this fortified shouldn't be vulnerable. Its sudden, violent collapse suggests a structural rot that started long before the first shadow appeared. The hauntings escalate quickly. After lights out, a towering, ghostly figure begins pacing the desolate hallways. The initial encounters feel like a classic ghost story. Fleeting glimpses of a broken silhouette, sudden drops in temperature, and the unmistakable sound of wet, heavy footsteps dragging across the tiles. But the pattern of the attacks reveals an unsettling precision. This entity ignores the vast majority of the sleeping students, bypassing entire rooms to hunt down a very specific group of girls. It knows exactly who they are, where they sleep, and when they are most vulnerable. When the entity finally corners its prey, the victims don't scream in pure, confused terror. They scramble backward with desperate apologies on their lips. Their eyes reflected deep, agonizing guilt. They recognize the face in the dark. The entity is conducting a targeted campaign of retribution. To understand the hit list, we have to look into the specific history the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has attempted to bury. The origin of this nightmare traces back to a single, socially outcast female student. She existed on the absolute fringes of the boarding school, a quiet girl who absorbed the cruelty of her peers in complete, isolating silence. That cruelty wasn't fleeting. She was subjected to a horrifying daily routine of systemic physical and psychological abuse. The film details severe beatings in the washrooms, relentless public humiliation, and the theft of her personal dignity by the very girls who claimed to be her spiritual sisters. Yet, in a classroom environment built on constant supervision and strict authority, this torment went entirely unchecked. The teachers and administrators seated at the front of these rooms willfully ignored the glaring bruises and the hollow eyes. For the school's leadership, maintaining the quiet illusion of order was far more important than protecting a vulnerable child. The breaking point arrived in the dead of night. A sudden, vicious fire tore through a storage room, trapping the bullied student inside. The flames consumed the evidence of her abuse, and seemingly her life, leaving behind only ash and a devastated family. The administration's response was swift and calculated.
Before the smoke even cleared, the school classified the tragedy as a simple, unfortunate accident. They silenced the whispers, buried the police reports, and prioritized the prestigious reputation of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 over the truth. By institutionalizing silence and protecting the abusers, the school inadvertently performed a ritual of its own. They gathered all the necessary ingredients: injustice, agony, and a complete lack of accountability, and forged the perfect vessel for inescapable supernatural vengeance. The vengeance begins with the lead bully. Trapped alone in the dormitory, the air freezes, the lights shatter, and the entity corners her. The resulting attack is brutal, calculated, and deeply specific to the girl's past crimes. The haunting follows a strict correlative logic. The left side of this map shows the acts of earthly abuse, holding the victim's head underwater, locking her in tight spaces, burning her skin. The right side shows how the supernatural punishment forces the bullies to endure the exact physical agony they previously inflicted, and the retribution scales upward. The entity targets the complicit staff members next. The teacher who turned a blind eye to the bullying is hunted down and physically trapped in the same storage room where the fire occurred, forced to experience the suffocating terror of abandonment. Desperate to stop the slaughter, the school's religious figures step forward. They recite loud prayers and wield their strict authority, attempting to exorcise the demon, but their performative piety falls completely flat. The prayers of corrupt men hold absolutely no power over a legitimate grievance. The film establishes a grim reality. When earthly institutions are utterly morally bankrupt, and the authorities who are supposed to protect you are the ones burying your body, the only justice left is supernatural. You cannot pray away a punishment you have entirely earned. The climax hits with claustrophobic intensity. The few remaining survivors are completely cut off from the outside world, frantically backing into the darkest corners. The massive shadow of the entity looms over them, and there is nowhere left to run. As the final judgment descends, the true nature of the fire is revealed. The fire was no accident. The bullies intentionally set the blaze to hide their crimes after nearly killing the girl. The entity stalking the halls is a jinn, a dark, avenging spirit summoned by her parents to inhabit her charred, surviving body. This revelation recontextualizes every previous scare. The entity didn't invade the school. It was delivered to the front door by a family denied earthly justice. It exposes the absolute moral bankruptcy of the school's leadership, proving that their cover-up directly engineered the massacre of their own students. The story becomes a devastating indictment of human cowardice and institutional self-preservation. Human cruelty, not the afterlife, stands as the primary source of horror in Munkar. When institutions prioritize their reputation over the physical safety of their most vulnerable members, they create a rot from the inside out. By refusing to punish the wicked in the light, they manufacture the very monsters that will eventually tear them apart in the dark. It leaves us with one lingering thought. The most dangerous ghosts are the ones created by our own collective silence. If you found this breakdown chilling, hit the like button, share this video with a friend who loves deep horror analysis, and subscribe for more deep dives into the dark side of cinema. Sleep tight.